Welcome back, design junkies, to Mechanical Engineering Made Simple. If the podcast brings you value, help support the show with a like, a follow, or leave a comment below. Today, we're opening up the workbench to tackle something that literally sits at the very heart of why things break. We're talking about stress concentration. We're going to look at why those elementary formulas we all learned sometimes, kind of lie to us, and how you can actually predict the true breaking point of your designs. So here's our syllabus for today's masterclass. We're going to bridge that gap between theoretical elasticity and real-world failure analysis by covering the stress concentration problem, net versus gross area, notches and grooves, the whole problem, multiple stress razors, and finally, notch sensitivity and fatigue. Let's dive right in. All right, part 1, the stress concentration problem. Let's start by totally shattering a common illusion taught in those elementary stress formulas. In school, those basic equations we rely on usually assume our components have a nice constant cross-section, or at the very least, a section with really gradual flowing changes. But honestly, ask yourself, why do real-world parts fail when those elementary formulas are screaming that they're perfectly safe? Well, we've got to face the reality that machine parts practically never have gradual contour changes. Instead, they're packed with sudden geometric shifts. And these shifts localize high stress in tiny, highly specific regions. Just think about the actual parts you work with every day. Turbine rotors, snap ring grooves on a shaft, pressure vessel crossbores, or even just simple threaded parts. These are the specific workbench traps we engineers deal with constantly. In these features, those localized high stresses completely override the nominal stress of the whole part. You can't just calculate an average stress and call it a day, right? Because the part doesn't care about the average. It breaks exactly where the stress peaks. So to measure this localization, we use the theoretical stress concentration factor. We calculate this as KT equals sigma max divided by sigma nom. In everyday terms, you just take the absolute maximum peak stress in that localized, perturbed region and divide it by your nominal reference stress. It's basically a multiplier. If your KT is 3, well, your peak stress is exactly 3 times higher than your basic calculation would suggest. Moving on to part 2, net versus gross area. This brings us to a massive question that honestly plagues CAD forms everywhere. When you're looking at stress concentration charts, what exactly is the difference between gross area and net area factors? It causes so much confusion, but getting it right is absolutely critical. The main thing is you have to strictly define your reference stress. We have KTG, which is the gross area factor, and KTN, the net area factor. The math completely changes depending on whether your nominal reference stress is looking at the overall uncut width of the part or just the narrowed remaining width right where the cut was actually made. Here is the practical difference. KTG is based on that larger gross section width, but KTN, that's based on the smaller, critical net section width. Now, because our design calculations are usually based on the critical section, right at the bottleneck where the maximum stress is actually located, KTN is generally the factor you want to use for real workbench precision. It just gives you a way better grasp of what's happening right at the point of potential failure. All right, part 3, notches and grooves. Let's walk through how specific geometries physically disrupt our load paths. We're going to focus on notches and grooves, which, let's face it, are everywhere in mechanical design, from snap rings to shoulder reliefs. But what do you do when you have a notch shape that just doesn't perfectly match a textbook chart? Enter the Neuber approximation formula. When you're dealing with a really unique groove shape, Neuber's ingenious relation lets you estimate the stress concentration factor by essentially combining the theoretical behaviors of deep hyperbolic notches and shallow elliptical notches. It's a fantastic analytical bridge that gives you a totally workable KT factor for any arbitrary finite width part. Okay, part 4, the whole problem. Let's see how this builds into the absolute most fundamental disruption in any mechanical design: drilling a hole straight through a load-bearing plate. Sounds super simple, right? But it radically alters the stress field around it. I want you to lock this number into your memory right now: 3.0. 3.0 is the classic baseline theoretical stress concentration factor for a circular hole in an infinite plate under uniaxial tension. Basically, if you pull on a wide plate with a hole in it, the stress right exactly at the edge of that hole is 3 times higher than the stress on the rest of the plate. It's really the golden rule of thumb for stress razors. Now, take that concept and apply it to something serious, like high-pressure equipment.
Crossbores in thick, pressurized cylinders amplify circumferential hook stress right at the intersection. In the real world, when these circular crossbores intersect, they create these immense stress concentrations that drastically lower your part's ability to withstand fatigue loading. You aren't just dealing with a simple hole anymore, you're dealing with complex, interacting three-dimensional stress fields.
Moving to part 5, multiple stress raisers. This leads perfectly into another hugely popular question online. How do you calculate stress when you have a hole and a notch at the exact same location? What happens when stress raisers just stack on top of each other? Well, this is called multiple stress concentration. It's defined as 2 or more geometric stress concentrations occurring and interacting at the exact same location. And trust me, this happens all the time on the workbench. Just picture a small radial oil hole drilled right through the bottom of a snap ring groove on a spinning transmission shaft. You've got a groove and you've got a hole. So how exactly do we solve this? Step 1, you identify the global stress raiser. That's the larger feature. Step 2, identify the local stress raiser, the smaller feature. Step 3, if the geometrical dimension of one stress raiser is much smaller than the other, the local stress is approximately the product of both individual factors. Let's look at a quick example. Say you have an infinite circular hole with that baseline factor of 3.0 we talked about earlier. Now, right on the edge of that hole, there's a tiny semicircular notch with its own local factor of 3.06. By taking KT1 multiplied by KT2, we see that the small notch basically acts as if it's a tensile specimen that's already being subjected to the multiplied stress of the larger hole. You just multiply them together to find your massive combined peak stress factor. And finally, part 6, notch sensitivity and fatigue. For our final lesson, we really need to address reality and look at why theoretical elasticity models sometimes just completely fail to predict actual fatigue behavior on the workbench. Because, hey, theoretical math is great, but metal doesn't always read the textbook, right? We have to introduce the effective stress concentration factor, or KE. This is the factor of stress concentration at actual rupture, and it's obtained through real-world experiments. Why do we need this? Well, when applied loads hit a certain level, plastic deformations get involved. The material yields slightly, and it redistributes the load. This means the actual rupture strength requires this effective factor, not just the purely elastic theoretical one. To link the theoretical world to the physical world, we use notch sensitivity, which is designated as Q. This is a measure of agreement between the effective factor Ke and the theoretical factor Kt. It essentially tells us how much of our theoretical stress concentration we actually need to invoke. If Q is exactly 0, it means stress concentration doesn't influence the strength of the part at all. But if Q is 1, that theoretical factor is fully unleashed. And you'll find that Q changes wildly based on what the part is actually made of. These are the exact material constants you need to evaluate notch sensitivity on your workbench. Notice how quenched steel, annealed steel, and aluminum alloy all behave so differently. This proves a pretty vital lesson for any engineer. Material properties matter just as much as geometry when you're evaluating a stress raiser. Which brings us to our ultimate calculation. This is the formula you're going to use for fatigue life. Kf equals Q multiplied by the quantity Kt minus 1 plus 1. This profound relationship calculates your estimated fatigue notch factor for normal stress. It's essentially the ultimate tool, directly bridging theoretical, mathematical geometry to real-world fatigue and failure. So the big question I want to leave you with today is this. Are you just calculating for some ideal elastic world, or are you actually designing for the realities of the workbench? Because understanding the critical difference between a nominal stress and a localized peak stress is exactly what separates a part that survives from a part that shatters. Remember, design junkies, master the critical few or the trivial many will master you. If you're leaving this episode with something you didn't arrive with, drop a comment. Takes you a few seconds, but it tells me this workbench is worth keeping open.